Hi, good day. Okay, thank you. Coming now. Okay, so we are live on YouTube and we're just going to record on Zoom. Welcome to Poetry and Prose. Thank you for joining us. Heather Ferguson is going to be our host for today, and I'm going to hand it over to her. Heather, thank you for
Thank
hosting.
you, Gersha. Thank you. Today is Mother's Day, the 12th of May, and 2024. So let's get started. We will start with you, Gersha. I understand you have a couple of pieces to treat us to.
Sure. Do you mind switching me with Cynthia just for a moment? I'm still doing some stuff in the back.
I see. Okay. Well, let's get on to Cynthia then. Cynthia, are you all set?
Yes, thank you. I'm right here, just pulling up my pieces here. So
Okay.
today I'm talking about my mother, and I just put down my thoughts and my tribute to my mother. Without any shred of doubt, the single most powerful influence in my life has been my mother. Editha Violet Field was born on 13th March 1907 at Fieldale, the family home in Belmont where I now reside. Here and there, I have gleaned snippets of information about the early days of my mother and her siblings, but I also gained from interactions with her family circle when I was a young child. I knew her parents, Ma and Papa, were imposing but loving figures. My mother and aunts and so on called them Mama and Papa. I suppose the influence of Creole or Patois on our family because my grandmother spoke Patois. What I recall is that there was a strong familial bond among the members of the family. There was orderliness, there was discipline, and there was spirituality. Going to church on a Sunday was built into our way of life. Meal times were regular, and we all sat at the dining table where conversation and good manners prevailed. There was always a welcome for friends. We had several staunch ones. In those days, the front door was not only unlocked, but open for most of the day. I think that obtained all over Trinidad in those days. My father's job entailed that we moved from time to time, and in those years the discipline and order that my mother exerted on us made an indelible impression on me. Wherever we lived, my mother took charge and ran the household in an organized way. My father was also methodical to a fault. Some facts stand out in my mind. When we were young, my sister and I had three good dresses. This is my younger sister. These were kept at the ready in the wardrobe for church and going out on special occasions such as birthday parties. There was no getting a new dress for a special occasion. The dresses were there, washed and ironed, usually of organdy with sashes, and one or other was selected for the event. I remember we had like a lemon one, maybe a blue and a pink, or a white and a blue and a pink, but those pastel shades. My sister and I had Clark shoes and socks for dress occasions. Music, singing, and recitations were also a regular feature of our lives. Mummy sang and played the piano and organ. Daddy had a good tenor voice. When we were children, a little bigger, as we were in San Fernando, my sister and I would plan concerts and we would hold a concert for our parents. They were the audience. What I have come to value most of all was that my mother was not a wishy-washy person. I knew that she loved us, but her way of showing it was to discipline us and train us in the way we should go. We were brought up to be well-mannered and thoughtful of others. Where I have erred and strayed can in no way be attributed to any neglect on the part of my mother. She offered us piano lessons. My memory is of going to Miss Abdul in San Fernando. The people of San Fernando would know the name Abdul very well. My sister took to the piano, but I didn't. I did ask, however, to be allowed to continue my embroidery lessons. I enjoyed those and have to this day pieces I fashioned, some of them from scratch, even drawing my own designs sometimes and embroidering them. For example, runners for tables, monograms on guest towels, and even designs on skirts I made myself. One skill that was not passed on was cooking. My mother prepared a meal now and then, and I'm afraid that neither daughter really took to cooking. What I enjoyed, however, was baking cake. I made the cakes and then literally ate most of them. I continued to bake cakes well into my 50s. I sometimes made fudge, and I recall there was a period of baking muffins. Another quality that my mother exemplified was overcoming all the obstacles of her married life to ensure that we, her daughters, were not deprived of opportunities to succeed. The boys in her family had been sent to college. My mother always regretted that she had not been able to proceed to secondary school and did her all to ensure that her daughters received a sound education. But my mother's speech was far better than many children attending high school these days. I think it was on account of my mother's wish to have her daughters educated that I work even to this day. She had felt deprived, and I owe it to her not to refuse to work in whatever way I still can. For the eulogy I delivered at my mother's funeral at Tranquility Methodist Church, Port of Spain, in 1997, I chose the following scriptural text to sum up the example my mother showed us. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon the earth, where moth and rust doth consume, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, for where thy treasure is, there will thy heart be also. Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 6, verses 19 to 21. This morning, I realized that Mother's Day has a special significance for me. So I decided to put down my thoughts. After a few years of marriage, my parents, Carl and Editha Mural, had their firstborn daughter, Doreen Margaret McLaren Mural. Not too long afterward, Daddy was posted to the Methodist Church in Georgetown, British Guiana, as it was then. Perhaps it was a year later. Sadly, I do not have the date. My mother went out to give a talk to the Women's League of the Church on Mother's Day. And she left her firstborn child, Doreen Margaret, in the care of the maid. The Women's League is a fixture in the Methodist Church, and the counterpart for the men in the church is the Men's Fellowship. Now we fast forward a couple of years to the sad loss of my elder sister. Doreen Margaret started to ail and cough from time to time, but this was 1939 or thereabouts, and X-ray was new. So the doctors didn't think of X-raying her. So eventually back in Trinidad, one doctor suggested X-ray. and it was then established that a piece of meat must have made its way down her windpipe to her lungs, where it lodged and eventually caused her death at 2 years and 2 months. I have even seen photos. My sister had photos of her in her coffin surrounded by lots of flowers. My mother played the organ for her funeral, which shows the fortitude she had. I think this was April 1940, since I was told that Doreen Margaret passed at the age of 2 years and 2 months. Well, she was born in February, so I suppose that was about 1938. I was born in 1941, so of course I never knew her. So my Mother's Day is always a day of sober reflection because I remember that Mummy went to talk at a Mother's Day function, and years later, the maid sort of went off her rocker and she blurted out that she had given the child a bit of meat, but that was years afterward, quite a few years afterward. So that's the story of what I think first about whenever it's Mother's Day. Those are my two little reminiscences. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. That was lovely. I really want to comment and say that it's when you were talking, it just really brought me back to the realization that, back in the day, how things would happen, especially with young children. I think sometimes we take that for granted, the sacrifices mothers make and what they hold. Thank you for sharing. Very powerful piece.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia.
You're welcome.
Amazing to realize that you're still living in the house that your parents had.
Yes. Well, we lived in different places because of Daddy's work, but through a whole series of circumstances, I have ended up here, and I'm the remaining one. All the aunts and uncles and all the cousins, even my first cousins. I am the last one to tell the tales of long ago.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
Well,
We open the floor to other comments. Anyone
Okay,
else? Motilal?
yes, I just like to say something, Um, listening to Cynthia's reading, how shall I put it, as a barefooted boy growing in the country district in Penal, the picture that Cynthia painted, that is the type of things that we used to read in our library books, you know, the library books, the English library books, and the Enid Blyton and so on. So I just want to say that Cynthia take me back to when I was going to school, and uh, I was with my as I say, my barefooted and torn pants. But while reading these library books, I used to go, I used to see myself in a world as what Cynthia described. Just a thought. Thanks.
If
Harold,
there's
I
no
see you nodding.
um Gershia, would you like to go next or should I have Harold go on?
Sure, I can go.
Okay, that's fine. Gershia will join us next with her pieces.
Thank you so much. Let me just turn on my camera. My computer's moving a little slow today. Okay, so I have two pieces today. First one is called Labor Pains. Labor Pains. Mother said to me as we sat watching the sun fold into the horizon, a pregnant woman has one foot in the grave. When my water gushed, the sun hadn't even stretched yet. 17 hours after, I met the devil. He broke my tailbone, and I spat in his eye. Mouth so dry it felt cut up, breathing in the throbbing. But the moment I felt you, I knew. But when she remembers over lunch on the gallery, she talks about how her own sweat cooled her brow, how she smiled at the nurses, even through tears. There are times she'll say, "You're my angel. I paid for you with my own blood." Once I asked her if she prayed during childbirth. She said, of course she did, but doesn't remember the words. She just knows the feeling. And that's my first piece. Any comments before I go to the second one?
Oh,
All
very
right.
powerful piece, Gersha.
Thank you. All right. The second one's a bit lighter. It's called Garden Secrets. My mother had a kitchen garden that I helped her tend. She would wear an oversized hat that hid her face. I see her in my mind today, head down, her voice and hands my only instruction. Every bug has its place. Not all will destroy your crops. Rub the white aphids off. Leave the ladybugs be. They'll eat your plant's enemies. You can't just look at a glance. You look under the leaf. If it's on the plant, it may be in the soil. My mother shared her secrets. I always listened, keen not to miss a word. No matter where she was, she spoke as if I was next to her, in a calm, knowing voice. Remember the eggshells to keep the slugs out. Now is the time to put the plastic bag over your pine. Sprinkle coffee grounds around the pak choy. Some days she sat on the edge of the raised bed. We would pick peas and eat them straight from the pod. Those were the days I could chat her ear off without her telling me to focus. I could ask her anything and she would answer. My mother had a kitchen garden that I helped her tend. And in the shade of this garden, we both grew.
Oh, it's lovely,
And
Gersha.
those are my
Oh, yes.
pieces. Thank
That's
you
a
for
beautiful piece.
Oh, yeah.
thanks.
Very poignant there, Gersha.
Thank
You know,
So
Gosha, I couldn't help thinking, that the ladybugs were also mothers, because I remember ladybug, ladybug, I think hurry up home, your house is on fire, your children are gone. So I was just thinking that, the ladybugs were mothers too. Thanks.
I had gone into a fair some years ago that were selling ladybugs. And they had a huge terrarium filled with hundreds of ladybugs. And you could put your arm into a hole in that place, not letting them out. And all of these ladybugs would crawl all over your arm. I will never forget that sensation. It was absolutely wonderful seeing these beautiful little creatures just tickling my arm.
There's a movie, Under the Tuscan Sun, where one of the characters says when she's going through a problem, she lays in the grass and waits for the ladybugs to crawl on her. And then the problem goes away. So it's like it's the classic metaphor of just leave it alone. It'll sort itself out.
Lovely, lovely.
Thanks, Althea.
So we should move on now. Harold, you're next.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
And you say you're reading a piece from Krishna? Oh, I'm not sure he heard me. Go ahead.
All right. Ready? All right.
Yeah.
This story is called Miss Samara. It was always so. When old Miss Samara peeked through the hibiscus hedge that separated her property from my grandmother's, Max Fabian, enjoying a smoke in the garden, quickly tossed his cigar to the dirt, angrily stamped on it, and stalked up the steps and into the veranda, where he knew Miss Samara's prying eyes could not reach. Slouching into one of the cushioned wicker chairs, this man I adored, this charming, urbane, outrageously alcoholic man of 50, muttered, "Goddamn wicked woman, always peeking, spying. That's what she doing, nosy, wicked old bitch." My grandmother, hearing this grumbling from her much-loved cousin, appeared from the growing room and with a wicked grin on her face said, "Max, I've no idea why you hate that woman. Shame on you. You're much too old to carry on so. She's done nothing to you. She's a poor old soul who's had a sad life. Poor old soul. Clara, she have plenty money. And how she get it? And that nice house, too. You know how she get it? She kill her husband. That's how she get it. She kill him, and she cut him up, and she plant him in her garden. For years, his bones been bringing up her anthuriums and her zinnia and her chardonnay. Oh, Max, don't be morbid. You know that's only gossip, and old gossip, too. Old gossip, true gossip, and she come peeking, giving me her evil eye. You're a silly man." And with that announcement, crisp and to the point, my grandmother retired to whatever she had been doing before being entertained by her cousin's nonsense, leaving Max fishing out a cigar from his pocket and pouting about the evil old woman who lived just one hibiscus hedge away. Yet the old gossip, the true gossip about Samara, must have had some validity, however wispy. She had been a young woman, no more than 13 or 14, when she left India. The year was 1875, and she had traveled with an indifferent chaperone in cramped quarters aboard a ship all the way to Trinidad to participate in a marriage that had been arranged between families to a stranger she had never met. The man, Ramu Manolal, was not much older than Samara, and neither was experienced in the ways of love. They were children growing up through a ceremony that would forever prevent them from growing up. They would be forever children growing old and growing older, giving birth to children equally childlike and inexperienced in the ways of love and the world. Or so it would probably have been, but for what happened, or what supposedly happened. Within a year of the ceremony, Samara found herself pregnant and not happy about it. She also realized that though she had married into moderate wealth, none of that money was hers. As young as she was no fool. First, according to the old stories, she managed an abortion. This caused her youthful husband such distress that he took to drink, and the drink was his excuse to abuse his wife. With the marks of his cruelty upon her, Samara went to his parents and told them that she would make his behavior public, that she was the cause of the loss of the child, and shamed the family were she not given a substantial amount of money. Her in-laws' reactions were not what she expected. They laughed at her, told her that if Rami had beaten her, that she must have done something to deserve the beating. Who did she think she was to complain about something like that? After all, a husband had a right to beat his wife. And as for losing a child, what proof had she that she had been pregnant? Get out of their house and stop being a nuisance. Be a good wife to Rami. Give him healthy children and do not give him cause to beat you. Disappointed and devastated, but not defeated, she found ways to save money and hide it from Rami. She also found ways to keep herself free from pregnancy. For though she could not forbid Rami from performing his sexual needs on her, there were plants she learned about that killed his sperm, and there were other ways too. As months multiplied into years without children, it was Rami who came to believe the worst, first about Samara being infertile, and then about himself. Was he incapable of siring children? If that was so, what an abomination he must be. To disprove that idea, his beatings increased. Samara shed not a tear, which drove Rami into furious rages and to the bottle. And then, overnight, he disappeared. Samara never reported him missing, and some years, some even thought she might have murdered him. Months went by, then years, and there was no Rami. Perhaps it was rumored he had taken ship, sailed away from his wife, a miserable woman who bore him no children. Samara, questioned by his family and the authorities, said nothing. What was there to say? She had no knowledge of what had happened to him, she said. One day he was there, the next day he was gone. She did not oversee his comings and his goings. He was a man. He could do as he pleased, and he did do as he pleased. With a shrug, she dismissed the questions. With a shrug, she dismissed the world. Surprisingly to all, she bought a house. This created a storm of gossip. Where did the money come from? Rami had given her nothing, and her in-laws had nothing to do with her. Her silence added to the mystery, which tended not to fade, even since she still lived in the house. Yes, the one on Cornelius Street in Woodbrook, one of the nicest neighborhoods, and right next door to where my grandmother eventually lived. So the years passed, and she grew old and older, always in the house on Cornelio. She kept it up, too, painting and renovating it and enlarging its well-tended garden, a garden filled with healthy anthuriums and zinnia and chardonnay, and all for her own use. What did she do to make a living? Though scrawny, she always seemed well-fed. Living alone, she kept to herself. Visitors? None. Family? Never. Everyone who lived on Cornelio Street knew, or thought they knew, or were positive they knew about Samara and about her sad and mysterious past. A past that featured, as time passed, considerable fanciful embroidering generously added to the tale of the few known facts. Indeed, everyone on French and Murray and Fit, all the other streets in Woodbrook, and beyond too, all thought they knew about Samara, but of course no one really knew her at all, nor much wanted to. When I was growing up, she was the wizened crone who puttered in her garden, spoke to no one, and by peeking through the hibiscus hedge, annoyed Max to no end. As young as I was, it was obvious to me that he was her entertainment, and it drove him crazy. For now, let us leave Max. It is time that I tell you about Samara's history, which I learned piecemeal. Some from my grandmother, renowned for telling me only what she knew to be so, and not some fabrication. Some I learned from Max, which I quickly realized I needed to take with a large grain of salt, and some from selected history books, the precious few written without a colonial agenda, and which told without prejudice about the last years of the 19th century, the years when Trinidad was a much valued crown colony of the then vast British Empire. Our royal rich island was already a conglomerate of immigrant peoples, with British educated whites predominant, all of whom promoted their rigid structure of upper and lower classes, a system that depended as much on their birth as fair-skinned people as on a good education, a necessary key to their social order. Without a good education, you could have been as white as flour, but you were still nothing. After the emancipation of the slaves in 1833, and with the sugarcane plantations in disarray, people from India arrived as indentured laborers, themselves little more than slaves. Slowly, but with a dogged persistence, they became a successful middle class of businessmen and bankers, as did the Syrians and the Chinese, who, like the Indians, had arrived as indentured laborers. Ambitious men, never women, God forbid. What a ridiculous idea. Why do we even think of it? These men of diverse peoples strove mightily to become part of the government, which the white British gentlemen ruled with that much written about iron fist, never mind the mythical velvet glove. And then there was the black population, the largest single group, brought to Trinidad as slaves, now free, yet they languished in a racist society, which still viewed them as servants and field workers. For them, it was a constant struggle to gain a better way of living, a more substantial education, and the respect and admiration they richly deserved for their inherent worth as a people. As for the indigenous natives, the Caribs and the Arawaks, the Spanish, the French, and the British had decimated them long since. If any still remained, they existed only in the unseen underbelly of the island, even lower in estimation than the blacks. Long before the island entered the 20th century, there were occasional disturbances, protests, and riots fueled by racial inequality and economic dissatisfaction with government policies. The uprisings were always put down, ironically contained by the proud all-black police force, whose chief was, of course, as expected, and therefore always a white man. Over time, though, it became a matter of island pride, that Trinidad's unique mix of races, cultures, and religions got along with differences either generously put aside or humanely tolerated for the common good. There was neither school nor religious segregation, and only a few places remained restricted to all but the white British elite, notably the Trinidad Country Club in Maraval, as revered a bastion of upper-class snobbish racism as can be imagined, secretly scorned as something that would not and could not last. Indeed, it eventually did not, though it took a ridiculously long time for its disintegration. Naturally, as was inevitable within such a diverse population, love and sex easily found their way, as love and sex inevitably do, through all the absurd boundaries of race, religion, class, and cultures. And the result were Trinidadians of great beauty and intelligence, the best of black, white, brown, and yellow, combined with sumptuous beauty, men as well as women. This class, an economically structured society filled with beautiful, multi-hued people, remained virtually unchanged until the beginning of World War II, when military personnel from the US, Canada, and Great Britain descended upon Trinidad to wage the war in the Caribbean. Trinidad had been blessed, or cursed, depending on whom you spoke, with a magnificent deepwater bay at Chaguaramas. Situated well north of Port of Spain and facing the Gulf of Paria, this sheltered cove allowed American submarines safe moorage. However, this situation made the island a target of Nazi subs, well known to patrol close to Trinidad's Caribbean and Atlantic coasts. By World War II, Samara, who had seemingly cloistered herself from society for decades, was a woman in her 70s. But something about the war and its pervasive excitement running through Port of Spain did something to her. She changed almost as if it were overnight, from the reclusive gardening crone to an animated woman who went out of her way to be kind to the servicemen, even inviting them into her home for high tea and lunches of delicious curried chicken pilau and roti. This behavior did nothing to mollify Max, who considered her sudden resurrection into society as an immense personal affront to him. That is, until she surprisingly invited him, peeking through the leaves and blossoms of the hibiscus fridge, no less, to afternoon tea. He went, of course he went. He daren't refuse such an unexpected invitation. Later, he said to my grandmother, Clarice, what I found there, well, my dear, I was shocked, plain shocked as all hell. Hearing him say that, my curious young mind wondered what had he found there, and why was he plain shocked as all hell about it. But Max never told anyone, not even my grandmother. Off and on over the years, I wondered what could have shocked Max, a man not easily shocked. Nonetheless, he was sufficiently shocked that he told no one and took the secret to his grave. It wasn't until I was an impressionable 18, passing what used to be Samara's house, that I remarked to an old Trini friend, a dear lady who'd known me since I was a child, about the old woman I remembered peeking through the hibiscus hedge, and how she aggravated my grandmother's cousin, and how he was plain shocked after visiting her, but never telling why. Oh, I can tell you why, my friend said, though you might be shocked too. She was a madam. She ran brothels, a notorious lady in her day. Good God, I'd no idea. Well, of course not. You were a child, and I can well remember why your grandmother's cousin said nothing. I remember Max well. He was quite the character, but he was very much a gentleman of the old order. He would not have even considered relating such information to your grandmother, or for that matter, most likely to anyone. As for Samara, is it any wonder she kept to herself and was so private? And is it any wonder she came to life during the war? All those servicemen, eager paying customers for what she had to offer, many even marrying what they originally paid for and taking their new wives back to America and Canada and England, all exotic, dark-skinned beauties to astonish those dull white countries. Why, just think about it. Are you sure about this? I mean, I'd heard so many fantasies about the woman that told for so long. Absolutely sure. This had been known for a long time. Abused and miserable, she set out to help other miserable and abused women, all young Indian women like her who were helpless. Marriage to an abusive husband is nothing but legal whoredom, and still is to this day. So was it such a disgrace to become a whore? Those poor women discovered they could make money, quite a lot of money, and with Samara's help, they did. And if abused by a client, they could easily dispose of the man and do so with impunity. It's even been rumored that if the woman was too afraid to do the deed herself, all she had to do was mention the matter to Samara, casually in conversation, as though discussing the price of a fresh soursop or a new silk sari. Little miracles happened all the time. Pausing for a moment to light a cigarette, she laughed softly before she said, "Oh, yes, Samara did herself proud with many women who to this day praise her name for what she did for them and for their descendants. And I'll say this too. There are a few wise men today who will think twice about abusing their wives, or should. Just mention the name Rami Manulal. His story is infamous. Everyone's heard of Rami. Might be true, might not. But why take the chance? Better respect the wife, better respect the mistress too. If not, why, who knows? You might end up like Rami, to vanish in a magical disappearance, becoming a ghost. For to tell the truth, isn't it impossible to deny that only Miss Samara knew? As for God, never mind him knowing. Whichever God you choose, all are indifferent to the sufferings of women. As I say, I'm sure only Miss Samara knew the whereabouts of Rami, that fine, fine gentleman. And for all anyone knows, perhaps he has indeed been, as you told me dear Max was so fond of saying. His bones are bringing up her anthuriums and her zinnia and her shadonbini all these many years.
Very good story, Harold. Very much wrapped in our own history. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, Harold, a great crime story, eh?
Yeah.
We finally found a useful husband.
Did she?
And that was beautifully read. I was quite taken up, and it grabbed my attention totally. Beautiful.
But I kind of suspected that the bones were under I thought under the hibiscus hedge.
he, he has been pushing up the daisies.
Yes.
Hi, Althea.
Yeah, at first I didn't understand that she had killed her husband, but as the story went on, that became clear. So she seemed to be a very strong, dominant, maybe charismatic, She would have made a great politician today, perhaps. Yeah, conniving, all of these adjectives that we can use to describe her character. I got a bit confused about the background, talking about World War II, and at one point I thought Harold had started a second story, but it was a background to the present situation with this woman. There are elements of the story that reminds me of Hungry Ghost that I'm presently reading. And the violence, prostitution, and the struggles and difficult life that these people experience. So I think she needed to be a strong woman in order to survive in this particular environment. Yeah, so that is your short story, Harold?
Yes, it's an entire fiction, except for the historical aspects of it, which are true.
Yeah.
But it's an entirely fictitious story.
Yeah,
yes.
very, very engaging and intriguing. So thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
Thank you, Harold. I love your SpongeBob SquarePants shirt there. Didn't realize you were so hip.
Harold, is it that you like cut the story a little bit because of the time, or is that how it flows in the book?
This particular story?
Yes.
Well, this story is not yet in a book. This story, I'm wondering which book I should be putting it in, because right now I'm working on 6 different books.
Oh, okay.
And I have to decide which one it really should go in.
Yeah.
But I really wanted to, because most of my stories are not about Trinidad, they're about Trinidad, history. And I thought, no, I really needed to write something that included the history of Trinidad, or at least part of the history. And I wanted to get it right, so I did quite a lot of research on that. But as far as the story is concerned, the characters are, I just made them up. I had no idea, And it's like one of those stories that I was writing, and I kept thinking, well, I wonder where this story is taking me. But okay, this is it.
Lovely share. Thanks.
Well, we shall move on now to Mr. Motilal. Are you all set?
No problem, Heather, but I think Vishnu has something to do, I think we should bring in Vishnu now. He has a
Okay,
story, and I
certainly,
will go
certainly.
afterwards.
Okay. Well, we're got the floor open for Vishnu.
Vishnu here? Nobody.
Was he there?
Yes,
Vishnu,
he's there. Let me just ask him to start his video.
okay, here's Vishnu.
There we go.
Heather could highlight Vishnu.
I am.
Okay. So I'm reading
Welcome,
a,
Vishnu.
yes,
Go ahead. Yeah.
reading a poem called My Mother, My Friend. I think some of you might be familiar with it. You were my mother and best friend, my role model and confidant. You were kind-hearted and generous, reserved and thoughtful. I will feel your loss for the rest of my life. Whom will I call or go to for that comforting hug? Who will go shopping with me or share that new coffee flavor? Our lives were so intertwined. We always knew what the other was doing. There's a void now that will never be filled. How do I learn to live with this hole in my heart? I tried making your favorite dishes, but they never taste the same. You were a master cook and baker, hardly using a recipe, letting your hand guide you. I'm redoing the garden, planting your favorite flowers, but my thumb is not as green as yours. Still, I feel you in every bloom and new leaf. They say grief is a price of love, and I am paying my price. But I prefer this grief to the alternative of not loving you. I will forever carry you in my heart. Thank you for making me strong and independent, generous and kind-hearted. You will forever be with me in my smiles and my tears. Thank you for being you, for loving me unconditionally. I'm trying to move forward with your love quietly guiding me. The author, Archie Gosan. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you very much, Vishnu. That's a lovely poem. Your mother would be proud.
Thank you.
We open the floor to any other comments.
I was just thinking, when I first heard of my mother's death, the very first thing I said to my friend who gave me the news was, oh my God, who do I have to fight with now? And Krishna, who's read the novel Pookie Doodles, would know immediately what I meant by that, but I've never forgotten. And I remember Charlie saying to me, oh my God, what a terrible thing to say. I said, well, it's true. Who do I have to fight with now? Because my mother and I fought all of our lives. So hearing loving stories about loving mothers is very sweet.
I love the idea of planting her favorite flowers. I think that's so nice. My friend passed away a few years ago, and a part of the bouquet that I got just had some greenery. And I took it when the flowers died and I put it in a jar by my desk, and it started to grow roots. So then I transplanted it into a pot. And now it's a plant that I'm just, hoping that it survives because I don't have a green thumb either.
Lovely.
I love that idea.
Lovely. That's very nice.
Well, we should move on to Motilal. Are you all set to take the floor?
Thank you, Heather. Okay, my piece is called Mothers, the Real Superheroes. In an earlier time, I remember the late Sundar Popo singing, "Your mother's love, you should never forget. The wrong things you do, child, you're bound to regret. Your mother's love, you should never forget. The wrong things you do, child, you're bound to regret. Many nights she lost her rest to nurse you from her breast. Many nights she woke up late and put you to rest. Many nights she grieved to see you grow from infancy. And many nights she wanted to know whatever you will be. So use your conscience and sympathy. God said to worship she and then come to he. God said to worship she and then come to he. Indeed, mothers are the real superheroes. In my village of Gopitre Spinal, it was the woman who kept the family together. Like Boise Kaki, who was the true head of the panchayat and not her husband Berich, who carried the title. Like Kisun Aji, who, after she was widowed, opened a parlor and brought up her 7 children by herself. Like Mrs. Gosain, who taught the village girls how to sew. Paras Nani, who delivered babies and rubbed Nara and Butchet. Chare Mami, who rubbed Hasuli and Chare Jaundice. Hua, who ran the parlor up the road and took care of her grandchildren when her daughter became ill. Lalchan Kemai, who had the rice mill. Kishan mother, who had acres of rice land and provided employment to the villagers. And then there was Alu Mausi, who sold at the Pinal market and sent all of her 5 girls to high school and was so proud when they became teachers. And so many others whose only purpose in life was to live to see their children become successful. Yes, it was the women in my village that were the backbone of the society. Not that the men did not contribute. As I look back, I think quite a few of the men in the village were to some degree alcoholics. Even the teachers, Kenneth and Ramrup, drank heavily. The men would work on Fridays, which was payday, go to John's shop and drink with their friends. Many of the little boys, me included, would go to the shop and ask their fathers for money for their mothers to run their homes for the week before they spent it all on rum. I grew up watching my mother, Raju, face every difficulty that life gave her. She went through hell at times, crying during the nights, but woke up every morning and did an awesome job of bringing up her 9 children. She was determined that her children have a better life than her and felt that education was the way to do this. My father, who worked with a contractor and loved his horse, had little time to supervise us. as most of the times when he was not at work was spent drinking and liming with his friends. In order to move us from an old carrot house on rented land, my mother did many jobs. She was a master at multitasking. She was a seamstress, a market vendor, rice planter, home gardener, cow owner, grass cutter, sewing tutor, fall farmer, and she still had time to be the lead singer at the Matikor and Barahi celebrations and at the temple for religious occasions. She took a loan from Barclays Bank to buy a lot of land and started to build a galvanized and board house for the family. My mother was the one who went to the school for meetings with the teachers, signed up for us to write common entrance, took us to register at high school, and accompanied us for the first day at school. She took us to carnival and insisted that we attended temple. She was particularly concerned about religious practices. While my father worked online, the running of the house, groceries, market, and children were left to Ma. She made the arrangement for prayers as well as celebrating the various religious observances. Although my father had grown up in a Hindu home, even schooled in the Ramayana, he seemed to have fallen back from his prayerful practices of his youth. He no longer made offerings at his jandi and often complained about the number of holy rites in Hinduism. Nearly every time is fasting, fasting, fasting. He would grumble, as my mother Raju would insist on a vegetarian diet whenever such occasion arose. After a while, he even stopped accompanying her when she sat down for puja, saying that someone should be free to welcome the guests. Even when they attended prayers at relatives, my father and the other men would go to the rum shop, only returning when food was being served. One incident remains with me to this day about her devotion to her religion. When they started to build our house, my mother insisted that they perform Bhumi Puja, which was the tradition of offering prayers to God and Mother Earth. Bhumi Puja is done to seek forgiveness from living things that take shelter underground. One may harm them during construction, or they might get displaced. Bhumi Puja is also done to seek the blessings of Lord Ganesha and the other gods to ensure that the work takes place smoothly after it begins. The Pandit was consulted, and a suitable date and spot was identified to put down the first post. My father, as head of the household, was entrusted with this function, but he half-heartedly participated. After the puja, he began digging the hole for planting the first post. He reached a few feet when he struck his big toe with the fork. It began to bleed heavily. All work stopped as he made his way to the casualty room in the San Fernando General Hospital. When he returned in the evening, the hole was filled with water that seeped from underground, thus preventing the planting of the pillar. Later that night, in pain and with remorse, he confessed to my mother that he did not pay proper respect when the Bhumi Puja was being done. That night, my mother, Raju, prayed to Dharti Mata for forgiveness for her husband. She decided that she will conduct the Bhumi Puja the next day. The water abated and the pillar was planted and the house was on the way. My father had a stroke when he was 50. My mother took care of him and still managed to educate her children. Today, we are all university graduates. Sundar Popo sang, never treat your mother bad, never make she sad. Make your mother happy and glad, she'll never wish you bad. You never miss the water till the well run dry. Just like your mother when she closes her eyes. Blessings to all mothers, the real superheroes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Motilal. And I see you're in good voice as usual. We welcome any comments there.
Yeah, very nice, Moti. And I like your singing. I give you 10 points at least for that. Jeez,
Thank you.
wonderful.
I have to go to Vilma for some singing lessons. She can sing wonderfully.
Well, she's reading later, so maybe she'll break into song too.
I'm sure she will.
Anyway, Althea is the next on the list.
Oh, okay. I
Oh,
was
you
just going to say that he's talking about a typical Caribbean mother, maybe not just Caribbean, but mothers of a certain generation, who was the backbone of families, and the point that men spent too much time in the rum shops. And those rum shops created a generation of alcoholics that, helped to destroy a lot of families. And, it, yeah, well, maybe today there are other things. I think maybe the mothers or the wives today would complain about maybe their husbands spending too much time playing on the Xbox or whatever they playing computer games and ignoring their family. So maybe that is like the rum shop of today. But I guess each generation has its own
Challenges.
problems and its own challenges, and somehow we manage to survive. Okay. Okay. I have only one poem, and the poem is from a grandmother's point of view. And it's a poem I wrote about me and my grandson. So I have 5 grandchildren, and my youngest is 10 months, or will be 11 months. Will be a year in June. Okay, so here I go. She feels their warmth, their synchronized breathing, the rise and fall of chest as one. Of the two, one young on the first rung of life, not yet on his feet, is trying to hold his back, his head up. The boy, his skin smooth, soft, not yet tainted by the trials of living, his journey still to begin. She, the grandmother, faced blemished, skin wrinkled, back bent from years of living, limbs weakening, uncertain. She cuddles the newest of her line, the latest twig in her family tree, long sowed in Africa, the Caribbean, roots spreading in America, now rekindling in Europe. The boy, a few months in this reeling world keeps her chain unbroken. She feels their warmth, the synchronized breathing, the rise and fall of chest as one. Okay, so that's for my Swiss-born grandson.
Very nice. Thank you so much, Althea.
You're welcome.
Shall we have some comments?
Yes,
I think
I'd like
very
the
nice.
comparison with the twig in the family tree. And I just want to make a little comment again. In today's Guardian, one of the newspapers today, there's quite a long letter, I think, about it's a lament of women who cannot have children. And what the writer was talking about, the that she there, and after she goes, there's nobody coming from her. And as Althea spoke about the twig in the family tree, the thought came to me. So nice thing is, I think it's either in one of the newspapers today. I usually buy all three, so it's one of them, and I was really struck by that letter. Sometimes people don't like to talk about what we should their childlessness then, and I thought that was
Yeah.
really brave of her to write that letter to the editor and to bring a real a good perspective. She really had me thinking when I read that letter.
Yeah.
I urge you, if you could get the newspapers, look at it. Thank you.
Anything else? If there's nothing else, we shall move on to Vilma.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Hi.
Okay, so I hope I don't go on too long.
Any singing parts there, Vilma?
I just want to get 2 lines in a song dedicated to Mother Lakshmi, who is the Divine Mother, who gives us knowledge, intelligence, and wealth.
No 2 lines, we're not
want.
taking less than a verse.
Oh, gosh. All right. Jai Mahalakshmi Ma. जय महालक्ष्मी माँ नैया मेरी पार करो जय महालक्ष्मी माँ नैया मेरी पार करो झोली फैलाई करी झोली फैलाई करी नैया बंधार भरो जय महालक्ष्मी माँ नैया मेरी पार करो जय महालक्ष्मी माँ नैया मेरी पार करो तू ही दयालु मैया ममता भरे लाखों दुखियों के तूने विपता हरे तू ही दयालु मैया ममता भरे लाख दुखियों के तूने विपता हरे हम भी आए शरण तिहारी हम भी आए शरण तिहारी अपना सा उपकार करो जय माँ लक्ष्मी माँ नैया मेरी पार करो जय महालक्ष्मी माँ नैया मेरी पार करो. Thank you. I'd like to move on to my little piece of story now. So the story is entitled, It Was in the 1930s, Jessie. So 25 years old Jessie was a mother of 4 young children, and her husband Prem, who was 6 years older than she, could never hold down a steady job for long. He generally worked in Trinidad sugarcane fields, and he loved moving from one village to another. Jessie had no choice but to go with him, even though she resented it. Every time he quit his job, he would come home after having had violent vocal altercations with the manager and give Jessie a reason that only he could find reasonable. So she never had any money to buy the most basic of foods or even clothes for herself or the children. They lived in barracks, and Jessie cooked food in the chulhas that were there. One day, in utter frustration, she decided to go to the sugarcane estate company where they were living at the time and ask for a job. She was hired, and henceforth she took over the financial management of the household with the pittance salary that she got. Thankfully, the village shopkeeper gave everyone in the neighborhood groceries on credit, and Jessie paid on a Saturday whatever money she could to bring the balance down. They got one lot of land on rent from an owner, and Prem built a carrot leaves covered mud hut to settle the family permanently. Jessie and Prem had three more children after they settled in that house. The older children had to help look after the younger ones because Jessie had to leave home very early, Monday to Friday, to get to the fields in time. The distances that she and other workers had to walk to the fields and back, barefooted, were long and torturous. Lots of pickers took them under their feet, which caused sores and so on because they were bare feet. The plus, however, was that they got home around 10 a.m. and Jessie was able to be a mother for the remainder of the day. Gradually, the children grew up, all having attended primary school till standard 7, where they could have moved in any direction. So the eldest child, whose name was Dudu, a female, she got married and went to live somewhere else. The second child, another girl named Shanti, became a boss seamstress. And the third child, a boy named Joseph, went to college, as we called high school in those days. The fourth child, a girl named Sita, was halfway. She went to school. She was halfway educated in college because she couldn't finish because of money shortages in the house. By the time the last three children were born, Jessie had quit her job, and Prem had gotten a job in a store in San Fernando as a porter, how they used to call messenger in those days. So the struggle continued until Joseph started working, and he took a bank loan to build a wooden structure with an upstairs level and a lower level. So Shanti, the seamstress, helped with the expenses until she got married. Right, Jessie lived till 86 years, and she died 6 years after Prem, who also died when he was 86. Jessie's favorite words to every challenge in her life was, "The longest rope does have an end." Also, the "Who do hear, go feel." And the third one, "What's sweet in goat mouth, the sour in he, bam bam." She would tell the children at odd times, when they were relaxing, that she left school in standard 1 when a fellow student stuck lagly, which is tree glue, right? That glue from the tree. The guy stuck lagly in her hair, and her father stopped her from going to school after that. She could not read, but she could count money very well. She used to be the susu banker for her, her neighbors. When they had to give her the money, she would keep it and share it out. Right? So another thing about her was that many times her younger children came home and heard her cussing loudly with the next door neighbor about whose chickens were running about in whose yards and so on. And nobody's yards were fenced, so chickens were free to run as if they please. But they used to have their little cuss outs. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Filma. You have my favorite saying there. Who can't hear go feel. I always like that one.
Yeah, I wish she used to be.
Well, Motilal, let's have a comment from you.
Yes, this is very well done, Vilma. Again, we seen the struggles of the mothers, and especially in the rural Indian community, we are accustomed with that. It's from
Mhm.
our grandmothers, our mothers, and all that. So it's very good. I don't know if the story was a bit autobiographical, but again, as I say, we highlight the struggles of our mothers, and
Yes.
we should all be grateful for our mothers.
Yeah, well, we will.
Thank you.
And I like your singing, Wilma.
Oh,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So later, if you all have time, I have a little poem to read. It's not long, and my children had given me this poem some time ago. I don't know how I managed to find it a couple of days ago. On coming up to this time, and it's dedicated to mom. So later, maybe.
Well, you can go ahead now because we have one reader after you, Frank, and so you can proceed, and then we will move on to Frank.
All right. I don't know who wrote it. It was given to me by one of my children. I still have no idea which one, and it's entitled "Children's Angel." An ancient legend tells of an unborn child who one day said to God, "I am told you are sending me down to earth tomorrow, but how will I live there if I am so small and weak?" God answered, "Among the many angels, I have chosen one to care for you. Please tell me then, here in heaven, all I do for my happiness is sing and smile. Can I do those things there as well? I will send you an angel who will sing and smile for you every day, and you will feel happy with the songs and smiles. How will I understand when someone speaks to me if I do not know the strange language that mankind speaks? An angel will speak to you the sweetest and the most tender words that humans can understand. The angel will teach you. What will I do when I wish to speak with you? An angel will join your little hands and will teach you a prayer. I have heard that on earth there are bad men. Who will protect me? An angel will protect you even at the expense of its own life. Yet, yet I will still always be sad, Lord, because I will not see you anymore. Without seeing you, I will feel very lonely. God replied, "An angel will always speak of me to you and will show you to return to me." At that moment, an immense peace reigned in heaven, and no earthside voices were heard. The child repeated quietly, "Tell me its name, Lord, tell me its name." And the Lord replied, "Mother." Thank you. That's it.
Mhm.
Beautiful, Vilma. Very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was happy to get it. I was happy to find it out somewhere hidden. It was hidden.
Heather, we have Diana here, and I show Diana Ramshaw. Diana always have something to share, so we could have asked Diana. And we have a newcomer here. I think that's one of Cynthia's friend, June Allen Miller. So we could ask them if they have anything to contribute.
Certainly. Diana, do you have anything for us?
I don't have any of like my own work, but I have a poem from a poet, Audre Lorde, I can share with you all.
Certainly. Yes, that would be very nice. You can go right ahead. Yeah.
Wait 1 second. So this is a Caribbean American poet and writer, and it's entitled Black Mother Woman. I cannot recall you gentle. Through your heavy love, through your heavy love, I have become an image of your once delicate flesh, split with deceitful longings. When strangers come and compliment me, your aged spirit takes a brow, jingling with pride. But once you hit that secret in the center of furies, hanging me with deep breasts and wiry hair, with your own split flesh and long suffering eyes buried into midst of no words. but I have peeled away your anger down to its core of love. And look, mother, I am a dark temple where your spirit rises, beautiful and tough as a chestnut scion against your nightmares of weakness. And if my eyes conceal squadrons of conflicting rebellions, I learned from you to defend myself through your denial.
Very nice. Very nice, Diana. Thank you. Any comments?
Very well done, Diana. You know, I know Diana always have something to share with us. It's nice to see you again, Diana. Hope you'll be here with us more often.
Now, did you say that, oh, June is, I don't know if she has anything to share or if she's just,
I have a short poem dealing.
Safia always have some song, you know. We could ask
Oh,
Safia Bash Hussein.
my throat isn't too good today. But this was dealing with mothers and their trials, what they have to go through. I'm not sure of its author and so on, but someone sent it to me as I was preparing to do a service today. God sees the young mother busy with her little ones. The baby in the cradle, the toddlers at her feet. God knows the toil, the thankless tasks waiting to be done. He understands her longings, her need for quiet time alone with him. So he gives her opportunities when toddlers are asleep. She sits in her rocking chair, the baby at her breast, her Bible open on her lap, pouring out her heart to God. Or she wakes early in the morning while the family is fast asleep. It is her time alone with God. She is refreshed. I thought I would share that with you.
beautiful, very nice.
Nice, very nice.
Thank you. We were looking at the joys of motherhood and the trials of motherhood and how it's all taken care of by the one above. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mhm.
Should we move on to Frank now? Frank, I understand you have a selection for us.
Yes. So my book is really fictional, but in the book I took a number of personal anecdotes in my life growing up to work into the story. And this excerpt I'm going to read about actually did happen. I was 1 year old, and that's when it happened to me. And it shows a mother's aggressive protection of a child from a mentally deranged person at the risk of attack by a cutlass. And this took place in Princestown, where I was born and lived for the first 5 years of my life, specifically in Aldana Street, if you know Princestown. And so, although it is fictional, the name of the protagonist is Charlie, and his father's name is Seamus, and his mother's name is Mala, and he's 1 year old, Charlie, and his brother Carlton is about 12 or 13 years old. So here goes. Charlie first had to get by Mildred. She was a middle-aged woman who Seamus had hired off the street. She negotiated a very modest remuneration as a living babysitter for the year-old and still diapered Charlie. Seamus never believed the adage, you get what you pay for. Mildred quickly adapted to the comfort of a bedroom constructed under the house. The house was a typical Caribbean chattel abode built on top of 10-foot posts, leaving space underneath the house for a garage or a recreational area. Downstairs, one section was cordoned off and a bedroom was constructed. Next to this room was a chulha, around which the ground was neatly liped, where some meals were cooked over an open fire to capture the flavor of the coal or the wood in use. At first, Mildred took a genuine interest in little Charlie, and kept him with her wherever she went. She secured him in a saddle, that groove between the soft tissue of her abdominal flank and her hip. She walked around with that hip stuck out to the right and the upper part of her torso bent to the left to counteract the weight. She was able to perform all of her functions with Charlie in this position. If he happened to fall asleep, she put him on her bed in the downstairs bedroom while she completed her chores, washing, ironing, sweeping, cleaning, cooking. A week after she was hired, strange things began to unfold. That morning, Mildred had her bedroom door open and was playing with Charlie, conversing with him in baby talk. Hey, goo, 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 goo. Hey, goo, 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 goo. She was tweaking his nose and tickling his ribs while she talked, bandying about topics only she and Charlie understood. Young Carlton, that's Charlie's older brother, young Carlton, who was now 13, was playing with his tough spinning harlequin nearby. Carlton happened to look their way through the partially open door, and he saw that Mildred was playfully biting Charlie all over his body, causing him to giggle and squirm. However, Carlton became alarmed when he saw Mildred begin to throw the baby up in the air and catch him on the way down. She'd exclaim, hey, and then throw him up about 5 feet above her head, his skull almost kissing the ceiling. And then she followed this with goo, 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 as Charlie came back down. She caught him in the midst of his high-pitched, exhilarated squeal as he descended, plopping into her arms. But Carlton was aghast by the forced throw. The goo, 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 goo was uttered, and Charlie had reached the zenith of the toss. But Mildred suddenly looked expressionless and rather furtive. Her look was as flat as any affect can be. And then she just turned her back and walked away, leaving Charlie to fall, a dead weight on the leaf-hid floor, broadcasting a thud, a shrill cry, and bawling as he discovered pain akin to the slap at childbirth. Carlton rushed into Mildred's room and screamed, "What happened to you, Mildred? You're mad or what? What you do that for?" Mildred casually turned to Carlton and put down the clothes she had already picked up to fold. She asked innocently, "Do what? What you see I do?" She lifted her chin and raised her eyebrows questioningly. Carlton was equal parts exasperated and panicky. He bawled, "I could tell my father." With that threat, he rushed to pick up the wailing baby. Unruffled, Mildred replied in a louder, more defiant voice, "Tell him now. I care." You think I afraid he? Hail to the police. And she raised her right arm in a Nazi-esque salute. This shouting match was heard clear across the street. By this time, Carlton had picked up Charlie and was in the midst of examining him for broken bones and bruises. Seamus and Marla, the parents, Seamus and Marla dashed down to see what all the commotion was about. The scene that greeted them was bizarre. Mildred was off to one side of the floor, biting her own arm and hands and then chewing an imaginary piece of her flesh. She then spit it into the air while grunting in a deep, guttural voice. Rah, rah. She panted, gasping for air. She stared blankly, her focal point approaching infinity. Carlton was sure she was catching the power. Charlie had stopped crying and lay in Carlton's arms, more comfortable and secure than a joey in a pouch. But to Marla, Charlie appeared motionless, and she feared the worst. Oh God, my child dead. Oh God, my child dead. Tell me if he dead now. Tell me if he dead. What will you do to my child? Who killed Charlie? Marla shouted at the top of her hysterical voice, and she attempted to snatch the baby from Carlton's arms. From her panicked charge, he perceived that Marla was still off balance, so he didn't readily relinquish the bundle. She had to yank the baby from Carlton's clutches. Mrs. Rusty, the neighbor from next door, also came running over. When she cleared the 2-foot fence, her nightgown got snagged on an errant nail on one of the slats and tore the fabric. She had to jerk the garment in a snapping motion to free herself. She let loose with a long stoops, acknowledging the rent in the cloth. Shifting her attention, she added to the histrionics of Marla and Seamus by exclaiming, "Oh God, man, what happened?" She pointed with her middle finger. "Who is that crazy lady there? All you want me to call the police?" Mrs. Rusty appeared mystified. She turned and gawked at Mildred, then at Carlton, then at Marla and Seamus. Her eyes revealed the apprehension that she suffered as her eyelids retracted to their maximum, allowing for a bug-eyed look. She looked like a ghost on a dark All Saints night. By this time, Charlie was startled into fright and started crying at the top of his voice. Seamus said, "All you move. I say move, give the child some air." He used his extended right arm to herd the others off to the side, away from the child. He started fanning the baby with a piece of irregularly shaped, dog-eared corrugated cardboard he had picked up from the ground near the chulha. The cardboard was used to fan the flames within the chulha. He tried to pluck Charlie from Marla's arms to commence his own physical exam. Mildred simply continued to bite her arms and pant. She was also spooked by the hubbub and began to speak in tongues, uttering gibberish that only she and the year-old Charlie could relate to. The pandemonium snowballed, with Charlie's crying, Seamus shouting, Marla's desperate sounds of bereavement, Mildred's psychotic babble, and Mrs. Rusty calling for the police. So much so that the neighbors from all around were drawn in as if it was a celestial black hole under the house. They wanted to see who was killing whom. Gossip had already reached the junction, the intersection between Ramdas and Ramjit Street, where the unemployed were liming. And the talk was that Teacher Lal was trying to kill his wife. Now that it was clear that he was unharmed, all eyes turned towards Mildred, who was still in the throes of a psychotic break. No one was familiar with the oddity of a schizophrenic in psychosis. Mildred's behavior was startling and frightening the crowd. They all spread their arms in a pretend protection of the others beside them, and they backed away from the afflicted psychotic as if she was Lucifer. Seamus was the first to speak up. "Mildred, you will have to get your things and leave today." He spoke in an authoritative cadence as of an assistant headmaster. "Nah, man, I staying right here. I is the Mary, Mother of God, and all it can make me move," she said defiantly. "The radio sending me message since morning telling me to bite human flesh." She immodestly lifted her right foot to her mouth. "I can cook my right foot and eat it because all they're not giving me anything to eat." Her ideas of reference further alarmed the onlookers when she claimed that Radio Trinidad was sending messages via news clips. "I could kill any one or all you just by snapping the finger. The voice of Gabriel telling me, kill, kill everyone." Then all eyes turned towards a rusty old cutlass that was leaning up against the post next to where Mildred was sitting. It lacked half of its wooden handle, the half that covered the other side of the metal. It was with this old machete that he stripped dry wood with which to fire the chulha. Marla was the bravest of them all, and she sauntered over to the post while Seamus tried to talk to Mildred to distract her. Marla gently retrieved the weapon and rejoined the hostages. They were hostages of their own ignorance, and the stigma of mental disease held them captive in an imaginary corral, stricken with fear and cold feet. I'll end there, but what they had to do was they told Mildred that she had to leave, and she refused. Certain things happened after that that eventually made her leave. But that's
Very
just
action-packed, eh, Frank?
Pardon me?
Very action-packed there.
Well, that actually happened.
And that baby was you?
Very, very well written. Very well written. Very exciting story.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it was that thought in my head that they attributed to my poor scholastic performance in school.
Well,
So-
you know, I was just gonna say, you know, what about shaken baby syndrome?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Tossing you up in the ceiling like that.
So
Yeah.
that's so the mother put herself at risk trying to wrestle that cutlass away from the mentally deranged lady.
Yes,
Oh.
yes.
Frank, we're really lucky to have you here with us today. Just
Yeah.
shifting gears a little bit, you know. One of the things I like the way that you described in the earlies when you was talking about Mildred with the child on one hand there, you know, and she leans sideways and doing her other chores. That is
Yeah.
something that I more or less grew up with seeing mothers doing that. Baby on the side and they carrying on, whether they're filling water, washing clothes, whatever.
That's true. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that gives another meaning to join at the hip.
Yes, yes. You're sure right,
Maybe
Heather.
that's where that expression came from.
It would be.
Yes, something like that, yes. Because the
Yeah.
mothers are the same all over the world.
Yeah.
Well, this brings our itinerary to an end, but is there anyone else who would like to contribute? We have
We have
almost half
Safia.
an
Yes,
hour left.
Safia.
Yeah.
Are you with us, Safia? Yes, not. She's not responding. I don't know. Okay, Eddie. I think
Well,
Vishnu
I
want to say
will.
something.
Her mic isn't on.
Oh, oh.
Go ahead.
Is there somebody else who will be reading?
I was going to contribute mine poem about a different slant on the mother. You know, the maybe emotionally abusive parent, the narcissistic parent that I spoke of earlier. I wrote a poem called Cannibal Mothers, and this is just an aberration of nature that happens even in the animal kingdom, where you might have dog or a cat that rejects some of the babies in her litter. And it happens with human beings as well. And I don't want to spoil Mother's Day for all the nice Mother's Day stories. But anyway, I wrote this poem. And this poem also features three female authors: Edith Sitwell, Beatrix Potter, and the French Irene Nerimovsky, who was a writer during the Second World War. And she documented the rise of Nazism in Paris, where she lived, before she was killed in the gas chambers. But these three female writers all came from mothers who were emotionally distant and narcissistic, and their way of healing was to put their feelings into words, and they became writers of some merit. And this is just a different slant on mothers, cannibal mothers. Some mothers eat their young. There is no nurturing, no love, no vision of a future where all that is noble in them can transcend time. There is no nobility, only narcissism. The blighted focus on just the here and now, where there is only me, and me. The child perceived as robbing them of attention, youth, and beauty. I am in good company with a sisterhood of writers who drowned their mother's abuse in the pages of books written to assuage a hurt so deep it is a bottomless well that can never be filled. As time goes by, it deepens. Yet, who gives life to a child just to try and destroy it? Irene Nerimovsky's mother denied her and her children in the face of the Holocaust. Beatrix Potter's mother treated her like a servant in a household where the servants held office over her. Edith Sitwell's mother raged against her daily for no good reason. To what end are these dreadful excuses for a mother, excuses for women, or for human beings at that? Jealous of the sparkle in a child, just the beginning on life's journey. They, like parasites, nature's anomalies, feeding off their own young. They are the snake that strangles its own eggs. There is an expression for this aberration of nature: filial cannibalism. It is a dark side of nature, to suck the life force of innocence, the basest drive to live at the expense of the other, even if that other is of you, yet holier than thou. They march proudly on through life. Irene embraced her times, recording the chilling rise of Nazism. Beatrix Potter's Peter Rabbit championed animal rights early on. Her world of miniatures reflected in a perfection not found in life. And Edith gloried in her jewelry, in perfect gems whose purity were polar opposites of her imperfect reality. Like these female heroines, I too have discovered the healing balm of written words, the perfect glint of gold, clarity of gems, the world of miniature where I can create all the perfection missing in my life. We are a sisterhood through time, always trying to knit up the ragged edges of wounds that never really heal. I actually wrote this for International Women's Day last year, March 8, 2023, but it's serving for Mother's Day 2024.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know it's a different view and probably not a popular view, but real just the same. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Althea.
I mean, it is reality. We read these stories in the newspapers about mothers who leave their 2-year-old in the house alone so they can go on a holiday with their boyfriend, you know, not thinking about how will this child survive, or they come back and they are arrested because the child has died from dehydration. And yeah, you do wonder, so what about the motherly instinct? And so yeah, not every woman is born with this, and it's a terrible tragedy when you hear these stories about mothers who choose their boyfriend over their children, and mothers who allow their boyfriends to abuse and beat their children to death. We hear these stories every day, and sadly, it is the reality of our lives. So, yeah, so it's not all peaches and creams, as they say. Yeah, that's it.
Well, I just think that, for these women that I spoke of, at least they were able to channel their pain and into a positive direction.
Hmm.
So, many a writer is born of adversity in different ways.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Adversity helps shapes you. While as we shifted gears a bit there, I'm reminded of a poem that Kamta Prasad wrote. And we had this, Vilma read this poem yesterday when we had our program at the Mud House Museum. So if I may, I would like to share this by Kamta Prasad, The Aroma of Chameli. It's a controversial poem, so I hope that we'll get some comments after. So
Well,
I
I
would
was
like
I
to,
was I was privileged to read it for him, because that is in our anthology. So when the anthology was uh celebrated, I read it for him. So I read it's a poem I really like. So thank you for bringing that to us, Modila.
yes, okay, so well, here goes. The Aroma of Chameli. On her makeshift bed, above an earthen floor, she cried and hugged her long-lost daughter to her breast. Silence then. Ma, you must change. Mama, you must change. Your sins forgiven unconditionally. In heaven, you will forever be. Here, in this book, it is written. She knelt, prayed, called out loudly to her newfound God, to forgive her mother's sins, her pagan ways. The frail mother held her daughter's hand and softly asked, Beti, Beti, God changed? As her daughter walked away, dismayed. Karmic relationship cannot be maintained. A little louder. Beti, Beti, God changed? God changed, Beti? At nightfall, by flambeau light, she passed away as the fragrance of the fallen chameli filled the night. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Very strong, Moti. Very strong.
Yes, that is a poem by one of our members. His name is Kamta Prasad.
Okay.
And what he was talking about, especially in the country areas in Trinidad, we have these, what we call these evangelical preachers, these born again. They will come in and try to convert the people there because our village used to be mostly Hindu, and they try to convert them. And the whole idea about, you change your God and have your sins forgiven and all that. But this is what this poem is about. This idea about the conversion. I don't know. I just thought I would leave it here because it dealt with the child who is a convert and the mother who is holding on to her old ways. Thank you.
Hello. Hi. Can I say something?
Sure.
You know, I was thinking about a story I heard years ago about a village in India. There were two different kinds of Christianity close by in other villages, different forms of Christianity. And the priest of this particular village was asked why the people in that village did not convert to Christianity. And he replied, he says, as a Hindu, he says, we have hundreds of gods. And he says, and they all seem to get along. But he says, these people who call themselves Christians and these two different faiths, he says, they're fighting against each other all the time. He says, why should we go with somebody who's fighting against what they believe when we're all doing fine as we are?
Thank you, Harold. I will remember that story. I might use it sometime. Thanks.
Yeah. So, Mr.
Althea, want to
Modi,
say something? Yeah,
Mr.
go ahead.
Modi, hi.
Go ahead,
Go ahead.
Vilma.
Right. Well, what happened is, Mr. Moti, you just the last lines that you spoke there is my story. Is my story. Okay. And I am glad that Ms. Ferguson has brought up the alternate side of motherhood, because there are mothers out there who are unable to envision how to nurture and train a child with kindness. These children, as much as they try to live among others when they grow up and try to fit in, their home training or lack thereof makes it so obvious when they are out there. I cannot, I always say, sorry, that babies don't come with a handbook, and nobody knows what is the correct way to bring up a child. But we go to school, we learn to read, and by reading, we learn that kindness to others breeds kindness in the world. But that is not, but again, not all of us go to school, or even if we go to school, we don't learn what we ought to learn. That's my point. Thanks.
Thank you, Vilma. Very well said. Anyone else have anything to add? Motilal, you better sing us out. Is Frank still there?
Yeah, Frank, yes. Hey, Krishna, are you still with us?
Yeah.
No.
Well, Krishna might have something.
Well,
Frank,
I think
I wanted to say to you, Frank, that please tell Carol, wish Carol a happy Mother's Day for all of us.
Okay, we will.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So.
Yes, I am here.
Okay, I don't know if you want to share anything, Krishna. I know
Well,
today you might get a chance to have an early lunch.
Yeah, I was gonna share one more little anecdote.
Sure.
There's other ways that mothers show their love for their children by what we might call tough love, and on the surface it might appear to be very inhumane. When I was growing up in Marabella, this would be about in the middle 50s, late 50s, early 60s. There was a single mother who had two boys across the street from us, and they lived in really a shack. And she, poor lady, she used to work and clean houses and bake bread to sell for the two boys. And so the one boy was very bright. He would, when all the kids in the neighborhood were running around playing hide and seek, he was always under his veranda, little veranda, studying from his books. And he won all kinds of scholarships in the days when you had to pay to go to high school. And, one time my dad dragged me by my neck to the window and said, "Look at Malcolm over there. We have all kinds of electric lights and so on, and he's studying by a lamp." and he's making all kinds of scholarships, and you're not doing very well in school. So the next day I went and bought a lamp just like the one he was studying with. But it didn't work. But I wouldn't call any names, but this boy, the mother used to beat the boys severely. And at one point, in a non-stop beating session, my dad went over to try to reason with the mother. And she chased him out of the yard with a ball-peen hammer and told him to mind his own business. But jump ahead about 25 years, 30 years, I was sitting in a dental office in British Columbia in Canada. And on Time magazine, I saw the picture of this same boy who used to study all the time and got beaten. And he was a very accomplished person in Trinidad, both in the industry and in the government. I can't call the name. And, he did very well. And it's a case of the mother using tough love to show her love to these kids.
Yes. So would you like to hear something from me?
Sure, Krish.
Right. I wrote a Mother's Day piece once, and I read it once, and perhaps I should not have read it, as what I thought afterwards. And the opening line is, when I was born, I did not have a mother. That's the opening line. When I was born, I did not have a mother. Yeah, everybody started watching me funny.
Yes, because you whet everybody appetite. Go ahead.
So okay, what happened is, you know about postpartum depression. Well, Frank would know about that, and other people.
Well,
all of you should know about that, right?
We know what that now, but our mothers didn't know about that.
Right. So my mother had to be taken away, and I understand she was taken to a sanatorium, Cora Sanatorium. Some people say it was, it may not have been that, it was something else, tuberculosis. But I know I was not nursed by her. What happened is, my aunt also had a child on the same day that I was born, 7th of November, 1954. And she it was who always regaled me with the story that on one breast she had her Sita, and on the other breast she had her Krishna. And just the other day, this Sita died. She passed away. So that was a kind of twin. But there is also another mystical thing about my birth. It was registered twice. Once, one birth certificate has Krishna, and another birth certificate has Alexander. I don't know. So that started fuel thoughts that maybe there was a twin, and maybe somebody grabbed one of the babies and give it away. And maybe that sent my mother crazy. I don't know. There's a mythical thing about it. Then when I was 4, going on 5, my mother sent me to live with my grandmother in San Grande. And that is the basis of the Novarians, where the Novarians started. It was myself and another brother. They sent us to live with my grandmother when I was 4, going on 5. However, I returned to the fold, to the extended family, to my family, at age 10 to 11. When I was in common entrance class, I was returned. And maybe all of that affected me. And as Heather said, maybe some of the things came out in my writing, having to deal with that healing, trying to heal, writing as the healing balm of words. Maybe, I don't know. So these are just things I'm throwing out.
So maybe I had a twin. Maybe somebody snatched one of us. Maybe. Well, there was an aunt who had a child, and we both 7th of November. She was correct in saying that she nursed one on one breast and on the other she had me. It is a fact that I was sent to Sandy Grande to live at age 4 to 5. And it is a fact that I returned at age 10 to 11. So Mother's Day for me, to say biological mother, maybe I have an issue with biological mother because I was raised by other mothers, right? And that's all I can say now. And I'm not showing my face either.
Well,
Okay.
Krishna, thank you for that, because I felt that my piece was contrary to everybody else's piece, but then it is a certain reality like yours.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Yes, I hope one day I'll bounce up my twin.
Well, actually, Krishna, you're talking about not, so much of your life, your early life is up in the air, is not knowing. Sometimes the not knowing is worse than knowing. And for many, many years, I couldn't understand why my mother was emotionally abusive. And it wasn't tough love either. It was actually abuse. And I couldn't understand. But so I even wondered if I was her child or if I was my father's child by somebody else. So it's that not knowing. It's you get to be 70 years old and you don't know. So that's hard. And so Mother's Day is problematic for me as well.
Yeah, and Harold could identify with what you're saying also, from what I read in his book.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, that's very true. Of course, Krishna, you're quite right, because, it finally occurred to me when I was much older that my mother's abuse, the emotional abuse and the physical, actually stemmed from the fact that she had grown to actually detest my father. And she was basically taking it out on me because he had long since died. So she really didn't have any closure about that. And so I was the scapegoat for all of what I received from her. Fortunately, before she died, she and I had made a peace between us, at least to a certain extent. But as I said earlier, when I first heard about her death, the first words that came out of my mouth was, "Oh my God, who do I get to fight with now?" But we do have. But I had a lot of substitute mothers that helped me through, and I think that was really, really a great deal of success.
One more thing, Heather.
Yeah.
So a couple of years ago, I think it was about 3 years ago, I went to apply for this new birth certificate. What was it? The polymer? Yeah, the polymer, the birth certificate. So I submitted the application. They came to me and they say, "Were you a twin?" I said, I'm not aware of it. They say, well, you have Krishna and you have Alexander, and we have record of that. So I said, well, no, I don't think I'm a twin. So I said, what all you'll do? They say, don't worry, we'll erase one of your names. I say, how do you mean erase one of my names? I go by Krishna and I have Alexander as my middle name. They say, no, it don't work so. We will erase one of it. I say, well, which one? They say, you don't study it. You don't study it. I say, but listen, I left, and here what happened. I never returned to see about that because I don't want them to erase any of my blasted name.
Well,
Krishna, you had to write that. You have to write that story.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. You could get 2 board paper and you could get 2 pension by.
Oh, Lord.
What actually happened is my birth was registered twice. One by the nurse and one by my grandfather. The nurse had me registered as Alexander, and my grandfather, who was a a devout Hindu, he registered me as Krishna. So I do have the original 2 birth certificates. I have the the blue ones, but I don't have the new polymer ones because I'm afraid.
You need that new one for any business you're doing now, you know. When you're gonna to change your ID card, I think you gotta get a new polymer.
Krishna,
But the blue
I
one
think-
has the pin. The blue one has the pin, and the pin is important.
Okay.
Krishna, I think what they may ask you to do if you were baptized, I know they'll ask to see those records too. So if you were like baptized in the Catholic Church or whatever, you could show those
What my
records,
father say,
or they will ask.
No, let me interrupt. What my father drilled into my head: you are born a Hindu, you will die a Hindu. No baptism at all.
If they may ask you to do this as well. Do a affidavit, with your legal name. So somebody who knew you, who knows your name, will come and attest to the fact that that is your legal name.
Well, that was
I had
done.
a similar,
That
well,
was
not a
done.
similar
That was
situation,
done.
but
That was done when I went for passport. They see the same Krishna Alexander, and they asked me where you get Alexander from.
yeah.
So, but that's my middle name. So they say, all right, see if you could get an affidavit. So that's the passport people. Eh? So
Yeah.
I say, I don't know anybody who know me when I was born and thing and raised. And all of them dead, all of them in the cemetery. They say, no, well, you have to find somebody. So Caroline's father came and he lied. He lied on the affidavit, right? And he said he knew me from small. My name was Krishna, you know, and Alexander, yes. Everybody know me as Krishna and Alexander and so on. This is the same person. So he lied. So he will go in jail.
But if you have because that happened to me where I think it's just because it's handwritten. Back in those days, my middle name was removed entirely from my birth paper. So they don't have my middle name, but my everything with the church has my middle name.
Yeah, but
So I had to go get an affidavit signed and stuff for them to know that, you know,
it is. You're talking about one birth certificate. I have 2.
I keep thinking of Shakespeare, you know, where he has in Romeo and Juliet, what's in a name? A rose by any other name would smell as sweet.
Well, I for one,
I cannot give up Krishna, and I'm not giving up Alexander.
Well, I for one, I'm sure about my mother, because when I was a little boy and she was beating me, I say, "Oh God, oh kill me." She said, "Well, I make you and I go kill you."
Lovely.
Well, Gershia, do we end now? We're a little after
we're about 5 minutes after. So if you'd like to end and there are no more shares, we can.
Okay, well, we can bring this meeting to an end and just continue in the parking lot.
Yeah. I have to run. It was
I have
great.
to run.
See everybody.
I have to run myself. I have
Oh,
to.
well, thank you all very much for today's contribution. And we'll see
Good
you
night,
again.
everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks. It was really
We'll
nice.
see you again in 2 weeks. On the 26th, is that? Yes.
Yeah, God willing.
Okay,
And
bye.
Heather will be our author of the month for the 26th. And it's also my
that's right.
birthday. See you then.
Oh.
Bye.
Okay. Okay, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.